want to have an open and honest conversation about what it looks like to heal from childhood trauma versus what we think it should look like. When I started my healing journey 8 years ago, I stepped into it with this sense of relief, as well as this idea that now that I understood and I began to connect the dots between what happened to me and how it was showing up in my adult life, that now that I had the answers, I could simply fix it. If I worked hard enough, if I showed up strong enough, if I put my all into it. These were old patterns of mine. From my childhood experiences, I carried a deep sense of perfectionism, people-pleasing, overachieving. These were all things that I did as a child that helped keep me safe. They were part of my protection armor. So I carried them into my healing journey, and I expected a lot of myself. I expected myself to be able to identify a pattern, course correct it, get it right, and move forward. I thought that the journey looked like starting here at the start line and progressing forward until I hit the finish line, where everything would be okay at that point. Everything would be fixed and my life would be better. And this could not have been further from the truth. And the expectation that I had when I stepped into this journey of what I thought I should be able to do, those high expectations, are actually what got in my way most of the time. Because when I did fall backwards or not necessarily show up in the best way that I would expect myself to, I would turn around and I would beat myself up. And that inner critical parent that I've carried with me for so many years would show up and let me know what I did wrong and how I was going to stay stuck where I was at for the rest of my life if I didn't get my shit together and figure this out. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and say, if you are early on in your process of healing from trauma, you're just getting started, maybe you're a year in, and you recognize the same inner critical parent showing up through your process when things don't go quite right, that you're probably carrying a lot of the same expectations that I carried. This expectation that we should be able to do more faster. We should be able to get to that finish line. I want to remind you that trauma recovery is not linear. We do not start here, progress forward, and end at this perfect little package with a bow on it in a place where everything is just healed and done, and now we move on. I wish that I could say that it looked like this, but it doesn't. Healing from trauma is fluid and it's messy. And the expectations should be more around the idea and belief that we are naturally going to slip up. We're not always going to get it just right. That is the more natural human response to healing from decades of abuse and neglect from the people who were supposed to care about us the most. What you and I are healing from is deeply challenging. I'm 42 years old. I started my journey 8 years ago. Everything up to that point, I was still being re-traumatized by my family, by toxic relationships that I had gotten myself into. I was still in the thick of all of my trauma. So if you take all of those years, 30 some years, I am now working to heal all of that time and all of those experiences that I've been through. And that's what you're doing as well. It's not going to happen overnight. And just because you have a slip up, or you don't show up the way that you think you should show up, or you think you can do better and be better, does not mean that you are not progressing forward and healing. It takes time. It takes time to unlearn all of these things that have been passed on to us, that we've unknowingly carried into our adult life. It takes time. And it's going to be messy. What we do in trauma recovery is learn the concepts. We learn to connect the dots. We learn to start seeing what has happened and how we're showing up. But the real work is when we go out into the world and we put that work to test. When we're in a hard conversation with our partner, our boss, our parent, our child, or when we are looking to up-level our life and we feel scared and we back down and we go into our comfort zone. These are all normal, natural parts of the process. You are not failing. You are not falling behind. You are going at the pace that is meant and right for you. And every experience that comes up gives us an opportunity to, number one, see where we're at right now, see how far we've come, and an opportunity to see how we can navigate it. And once we navigate it in the way that feels most natural to us in that moment, if it's not quite where we want to be, we then get to go back to the drawing board and we get to look at it, evaluate it, see where we showed up, see what we can do to course correct and do better. But what I'm asking of you through this entire process is to offer yourself deep self-compassion and empathy for where you've been and the fact that you're doing the best you can do with what you have right now. And trust that as long as you keep doing the work, showing up for yourself, and trying to be better each time, that you are indeed progressing forward and you're not falling behind. Healing from trauma takes time, patience, trust, and most importantly, self-compassion. So please hear me when I tell you that you are getting it just right. Even if you have an amazing week and 2 weeks from now everything goes to shit, still does not mean that you're failing. Does not mean that you're not doing a great job. Please, please, please hear me when I ask you to bring self-compassion into your healing process. This is when you will really start to see things progress forward, when you can start being more caring, loving, and gentle towards yourself. If you're looking for support around this, I would love to talk with you. I love working with clients one-on-one to help them navigate through this tricky process and to gain the understanding of what it actually looks like to heal from trauma. Leave me a message. I would love to chat.